So we're going to start our interview section off with assessment days. Now this actually is going to cover the whole range of different things that you might encounter as your interview or your assessment day, because very rarely on a professional development scheme do you turn up just for one interview. So you're probably going to have some kind of series of different tests and interviews, varying in formality. So this can be a day in the life of situation. This can be a series of interviews, a series of tests, some combination, and then there's the whole amount of time that you spend there. So we're just going to pull all this together. So this is going to be suitable for whatever kind of company that you're applying to. So series of tests. If you haven't done your online tests already, and actually, to be honest, even if you have, you might actually be asked to do some kind of test whilst you're at the company. So this can be a use of English, a comprehension kind of assessment, your math skills, your maths reasoning, something to do with spatial reasoning or logical thinking. If there's a requirement for a second language, that your level in that might be assessed. If you're applying for a coding job, it could be that your coding skills are assessed, or your computing skills, or something about how you assimilate information and present it. So these tests might not just be literally a sit down and a write test, although I have done assessments like that where I've had to write a one-side essay on something to prove that I can write legibly and in English. This does happen. Sometimes they're being assessed in different ways. What's a little bit more common is actually a series of interviews. So you turn up, you have a whole day assessment day, but you have a series of different interviews to do during that time with different people. So this could be a technical interview, it could be a HR interview, it could be just a nice chat with somebody, it can be a competency interview, an interview with your peers, it could be like kind of the time that's between these interviews, which is also an interview, which I'll come on to in a bit. It could be that you've got a pre-prepared task that you have to show them. So the next section is dealing with these different types of interview in more detail, but just be aware that there's lots of different types of interview and you could be asked to do multiple ones of them. So larger companies tend to do things in a nice flow of things because they have a lot of staff. It's a very formalised process. They are assessing you on a lot of different things and you go through from one task to the next. Medium to small size companies quite often do something that I've termed a day in the life of. So you turn up and you do a simulated day at the office. So you'll be given your tasks to do at the beginning of the day, you get a desk to sit at, you start doing your tasks, and then you'll be interrupted. You might be taken off to do an interview, you might be taken off to go and have a chat with HR, go off for lunch. You will be given more information as time goes on to help you with your task that you have to include. Similar idea to a group task actually in a lot of ways, but just a different way of structuring the same kind of idea for your interviews. So when your part of your interview day is very clearly formal, when you're sat down in front of your two interviewers doing your competency-based interview or you're doing your task, it's very clear that you're in an interview. But do just remember that basically the entire time that you are on site, you are at interview. So this is outside your formal bits of your interview. Some companies, particularly if you work in the defence industry, there's a lot of paperwork that you need to fill in on your interview day. Take the documentation with you that you need, but also act as if you're in a professional environment during that time as well, because essentially you are being interviewed for the entire day. This includes lunchtime, coffee time, when you're sat in reception waiting for someone to come and get you. Actually, to be also honest, when you're on the way to site, because if you're really lucky, somebody that I was interviewing with once was randomly sat on the train next to one of the people that they were interviewing later that day. So, you know, treat it as a 24-hour interview, and don't, you know, relax. Even if they say this is not part of the formal interview, okay, you can relax a little bit. You don't have to be in an interview the entire time, but don't relax too far. You're still in a professional work environment. You might well be sent to lunch with some of the people that are on the scheme that you're applying for already. The interviewers are going to ask them about you. So no, it's not a formal interview, but, you know, behave professionally, behave how you would behave in that company. Because they chat. You know, I always went to go and see the people that took them to lunch and ask them what they thought, or the people that took them to coffee, because you get more of an idea about the person and whether they're going to fit in and whether this is the right place for them. So remember, all your interactions count. So we've had a look at a few different structures for assessment days, whether it's going to be just a set of discrete tasks with times in between, whether you're going to be sat down at a desk creating taking a day's work kind of in process. It doesn't matter. It's just what the company's decided to do. If they ask you to take any documentation with you, take the documentation with you. They're not doing it for fun. If you're going to a secure site, you do need to take your passport to show that you are who you are and you have the correct eyes to go onto that site, for example. And just be ready to actually interact with different members of staff. So obviously you're going to interact with your interviewers and the people from HR that are running, also from recruitment part of HR that are running the interview. But you might also interact with other people on the graduate or the apprentice scheme. It tends to be the graduates, even if you're applying for a year in industry or a summer placement, because they're the people that are on site all the time. So you're going to be interacting with them. You're going to be interacting with the people on reception. So just be ready and prepared for that kind of thing. Okay, when you're ready, on to the next video. I'll meet you there.